The evening rush at Blue Harbor, one of the fanciest restaurants in the city, was in full swing. The place sparkled with crystal chandeliers, polished silverware, and the soft glow of candles on every table. 26-year-old Elena Reyes hurried between tables, her black uniform neat despite the long hours she had already worked. The weight of exhaustion pulled at her shoulders, but she kept a gentle smile on her face as she served each customer. Elena wasn't just tired from today's shift. She was tired from the past 5 years of working double shifts 6 days a week. Life hadn't always been this hard. Once she had different dreams that seemed to belong to someone else now. "Order up for table 12, called the head chef. Elena quickly grabbed the plates, arranging them carefully on her serving tray. As she balanced the heavy tray, on her shoulder she glanced at the clock. 3 more hours until she could go home to check on her little brother Miguel. The thought of him gave her the energy to keep going. Miguel was only 16 and battling a rare form of arthritis that required expensive medications and regular physical therapy. After their parents died in a car accident 5 years ago, Elena had become his guardian, his provider, and sometimes even his nurse. The medical bills kept piling up, but Elena never complained. She would do anything for her brother. "Did you hear who's coming tonight?" whispered Tanya, another waitress, as they passed each other. "No, who?" Elena arranged water glasses on her tray. "Richard Zhang," Tanya said with wide eyes. "The tech billionaire. He's rented the entire VIP lounge for some big celebration. Lisa says he's worth over $30 billion. Elena nodded politely but didn't share Tanya's excitement. Rich. People came to Blue Harbor all the time. In her experience, they rarely noticed the staff unless something went wrong. As the evening progressed, Elena was assigned to help serve in the VIP lounge where Zhang's party was taking place. The room was separated from the main dining area by frosted glass doors and featured a stunning view of the city skyline. In the corner sat a beautiful grand piano that was mostly for show. The restaurant usually played recorded classical music instead. When Elena entered carrying a tray of champagne flutes, she immediately felt the different energy in the room. About 20 people in expensive clothes stood in small groups talking and laughing loudly. The men wore suits that probably cost more than what Elena made in 3 months. The women sparkled with jewelry that caught the light with every gesture. And then there was Richard Zhang himself. He wasn't what Elena had expected. He wasn't particularly tall or handsome, but he commanded attention like no one else in the room. He wore a simple dark suit with no tie, and his black hair was neatly combed to the side. When he spoke, everyone leaned in to listen. When he laughed, others quickly joined in. "More champagne, please," a woman called to Elena, barely looking. At her, Elena moved through the crowd offering drinks and collecting empty glasses. She tried to remain invisible, efficient but unnoticed, just as she'd learned to be. As she worked, she couldn't help overhearing bits of conversation, talk about million-dollar deals, vacations to places she'd never heard of, and complaints about problems that seemed so trivial compared to what regular people faced every day. The recorded music playing softly in the background switched to a new classical piece, something light and pleasant, but nothing special. Zhang suddenly frowned and raised his hand. The entire room fell quiet almost instantly. "What is this music?" he asked, his voice clear and commanding. He looked at the restaurant manager who had been hovering nearby all evening. "It's our standard playlist, sir. Classical pieces selected to—" "It's boring," Zhang interrupted. "Completely forgettable. Don't you have something better?" The manager looked flustered. "We can certainly change the selection if you—" "That piano." Zhang pointed to the grand piano in the corner. "Is it just for show or does it actually work?" "It's fully functional, sir. Sometimes for special events we hire a pianist, but so no one here can play." Zhang looked around the room, his eyebrows raised in challenge. The guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one stepped forward. Elena tried to make herself even smaller as she collected empty glasses onto her tray. She kept her eyes down, focusing on her task. The last thing she wanted was to draw attention. But then it happened. As she reached for a glass, her sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing a small tattoo on her wrist. 5 simple lines. A musical. staff with a few notes. It was the beginning of Chopin's Nocturne Op. 9, No. 2, her mother's favorite piece. Zhang's sharp eyes caught the movement, then fixed on her wrist. His gaze traveled up to her face, studying her with sudden interest. Elena quickly pulled her sleeve down, but it was too late. "You," he said, pointing directly at her. The entire room turned to stare. "Those are pianist's hands, I can always tell." Elena felt her cheeks burn as everyone stared at her. She clutched her tray tighter. "Sir, I'm just a waitress." "No," Zhang said, walking closer to her. "You're not just anything. You play, don't you?" The truth was, Elena had once been much more than a waitress. For 15 years, she had trained to become a concert pianist. She had been accepted to the National Conservatory of Music on a full scholarship. Her teachers had called her gifted, exceptional, but then her parents died and Miguel needed her. Dreams had to be put aside. "I used to," she admitted quietly. "A long time ago." Zhang smiled, but there was something challenging in his expression. He gestured toward the piano. "Play something for us." It wasn't a request. It was a command. The restaurant manager stepped forward, looking nervous. "Mr. Zhang, Elena is working right now. Perhaps we could arrange I'm sure you can spare one waitress for a few minutes," Zhang said, not taking his eyes off Elena. "I'm curious to hear what she can do." Elena felt trapped. Around her, the wealthy guests watched with amused interest, as if this was some kind of entertainment arranged for them. Some looked embarrassed for her, assuming she would fail. Others seemed eager to see the waitress put in her place. "Go on," Zhang insisted, crossing his arms. "Show us what those hands can do." The room fell completely silent. Elena could feel 20 pairs of eyes staring at her, waiting. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The tray in her hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. I can't," she said quietly. "I haven't played in years." Zhang raised an eyebrow. "Years? Why would someone with talent stop playing?" Elena didn't answer. How could she explain her whole life story to this room full of strangers who had never worried about paying bills or taking care of a sick family member? The restaurant manager, Mr. Patel, hurried to her side and gently took the tray from her trembling hands. He leaned close and whispered urgently in her ear, "Elena, please. Mr. Zhang's party is spending more tonight than we make in a week. If he wants someone to play the piano." He didn't finish the sentence, but his meaning was clear. Elena understood what was at stake. It wasn't just about her. It was about Mr. Patel, who had given her flexible hours when Miguel needed extra care. It was about the cooks, the dishwashers, and all the other waiters who depended on big spenders like Zhang for their tips. If she refused, and Zhang got upset, everyone would suffer. "I'll try," she finally said. Mr. Patel gave her shoulder a grateful squeeze. "Thank you." As Elena made her way to the piano, the crowd parted. Some guests whispered to each other, smirking behind their hands. One woman in a sparkly dress laughed and said to her companion, "This should be entertaining." The other servers who had been working the party kept their eyes down. Tanya gave Elena a sympathetic look from across the room. They all knew what was happening. Their co-worker was being forced to perform like a circus animal for the amusement of the wealthy. The grand piano stood in the corner, its polished black surface gleaming under the soft lights. It was much nicer than the old upright Elena had learned on as a child, or even the pianos at the community college where she had practiced before her parents died. This was a concert piano, the kind she had once dreamed of playing on a real stage. Elena sat down on the bench, her legs unsteady. She stared at the white and black keys, feeling like she was looking at an old friend she had betrayed by staying away so long. When she placed her hands in position, she was shocked to find they were visibly shaking. Zhang had followed her to the piano and now stood just a few feet away, arms crossed, watching her with intense curiosity. There was something cold in his gaze that made Elena think he was expecting, maybe even hoping, she would embarrass herself. "What will you play for us?" he asked. Elena's mind went blank. She had once known dozens of pieces by heart, from Bach to Debussy. But now, with panic clouding her thoughts, she couldn't remember how any of them began. "I don't know," she admitted. "Play anything," Zhang said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Show us what you can do." Elena took a deep breath and tried to calm her racing heart. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to remember. Her fingers found the keys on their own, and she began to play the simplest piece she could think of, a basic melody she had taught Miguel years ago when she had briefly tried to pass on her love of music to him. The notes came out hesitant and unsure. Her timing was off. 5 years without practice had stiffened her fingers, and they moved awkwardly across the keys. She hit a wrong note and winced visibly. Then another. The simple tune sounded childish and clumsy in the elegant room. Someone snickered. Elena's cheeks burned with shame. She wanted to stop, to run from the room and never come back. But she kept going, forcing herself through the simple melody. As she played, memories washed over her. She remembered sitting at their old piano at home, her mother standing behind her, gently correcting her posture. "Sit up straight, Elena. Let your fingers dance across the keys." She remembered her father's proud face when she won her first competition at age 12. "My daughter will play at Carnegie Hall someday," he had told everyone who would listen. The thought of her parents made Elena's chest tighten. What would they think if they could see her now? Their gifted daughter, the one who was supposed to share her music with the world, reduced to stumbling through a beginner's piece for the amusement of bored rich people. She thought of the scholarship letter she had folded and put away in a drawer 5 years ago, the opportunity of a lifetime gone. She thought of the countless hours she had spent practicing, the calluses she had built on her fingertips, the parties she had missed because she needed to rehearse. All that dedication, all that sacrifice, what had it been for? As these thoughts tumbled through her mind, Elena's playing grew worse rather than better. Her fingers felt clumsy and foreign on the keys. A particularly jarring wrong note made her stop altogether. Scattered chuckles rippled through the audience. Elena looked up to see several guests exchanging amused glances. The woman in the sparkly dress whispered something to her companion, and they both laughed quietly. The staff along the walls looked pained, secondhand embarrassment clear on their faces. Tanya had turned away completely, unable to watch her friend's humiliation. Zhang was watching Elena with an unreadable expression. Was that disappointment in his eyes, or was he enjoying her failure? "I'm sorry," Elena said, her voice barely audible. "I told you I haven't played in years." She started to rise from the bench, thinking only of escaping this nightmare, but Zhang held up his hand. "No," he said firmly, "don't stop." "But I can't, you're not trying," he interrupted. There was a challenge in his voice now. "You're playing like you're afraid of the piano." Elena stared at him, surprised by his comment. It was true. She was afraid, not of the piano itself, but of everything it represented. The dreams she'd lost, the person she used to be, the future she would never have. "Close your eyes," Zhang instructed. When she hesitated, he added in a softer tone, "Please." Against her better judgment, Elena closed her eyes. The room disappeared. The staring faces, the judgment, even Zhang himself, all gone in the darkness behind her eyelids. "Now," Zhang said, his voice reaching her as if from far away, "play something you love." Elena kept her eyes closed, fingers resting lightly on the cool piano keys. Something Zhang had said struck a chord inside her. She was afraid of the piano, afraid of what it reminded her of, afraid of how much she still loved it, afraid of the pain that came with remembering who she used to be. "Play something you love," Zhang had said. What did she love? With her eyes still closed, Elena's mind drifted to the piece she used to play for her mother on Sunday afternoons. It was a gentle melody, something her mother would hum while cooking or doing housework. Without thinking too much, Elena's fingers began to move. The first few notes were hesitant, like someone testing the temperature of water before diving in. Then slowly, as if awakening from a long sleep, Her hands remembered their purpose. The simple melody flowed from her fingers, not perfectly, but with genuine feeling. As she played, something strange happened. The stiffness in her hands began to loosen. Years of muscle memory, buried but not erased, started to return. It was like riding a bicycle after a long time. Awkward at first, but her body remembered even if her mind had forgotten. The melody grew stronger. Elena added a left-hand harmony that she hadn't planned, her fingers finding the right keys almost on their own. The music began to change, to evolve. Without realizing it, she transitioned into something more complex, a piece she had written herself during her last year of high school. It was a composition that had won her a regional competition, one that had helped secure her scholarship. She had poured everything into that piece, her hopes, her dreams, her understanding of music. She had never given it a proper title, always just calling it my piece when anyone asked. Elena's fingers moved faster now, more confidently. The notes rang clear and true in the quiet room. She had forgotten about Zhang, about the party guests, about everyone watching her. In this moment, there was only the music. As she continued to play, Elena felt something inside her chest begin to unfurl, something that had been tightly wound for years. It was as if she had been walking around with only half her heart working, and suddenly the rest was coming back to life. Each note seemed to chip away at the walls she had built around her past, around her passion. She didn't notice that the entire kitchen staff had paused their work and gathered at the doorway to listen. She didn't see Mr. Patel's surprised expression, or the way Tanya stared at her with wide, amazed eyes. She didn't notice how Zhang had moved closer to the piano, his eyes intent on her fingers as they danced across the keys. The piece grew more intense. It reached the part where Elena had always imagined mountains, tall, immovable, challenging. Her left hand played deep, thunderous chords while her right hand climbed higher, reaching for something just beyond grasp. This was the part that had given her the most trouble when she was composing it. She had wanted it to express struggle, to show how hard it was to keep going when obstacles seemed insurmountable. Now, as she played it again after all these years, she understood it differently. Those mountains weren't just obstacles, they were also strength. They were solid ground beneath her feet. They were the foundation that supported everything else. The music changed again, growing softer but not weaker. This was the part that came after struggle, the part about finding peace, about acceptance. Elena had written it thinking about her future, about all the possibilities that lay ahead. She had been so young then, so full of hope. Playing it now, after everything that had happened, gave the music new meaning. It wasn't just about youthful dreams anymore. It was about surviving, about finding beauty even when life took unexpected turns. It was about the strength it takes to put someone else's needs before your own. Elena thought of Miguel, of his brave smile even when he was in pain. She thought about the way he always asked about her day, even when his had been much harder. She poured that love into the music, letting it flow through her fingers. Without planning to, she added a new section to the piece, something she was creating right there in the moment. It started softly, almost tentatively, like a question being asked. Then it grew, finding its voice, becoming more confident with each measure. This new music wasn't about the past or about what might have been. It was about now. It was about who she had become. The final section of the piece had always been her favorite part to play. It brought together all the themes from earlier, weaving them into something whole and complete. As Elena played these familiar notes, she felt tears gathering behind her closed eyelids. She didn't try to hold them back. They weren't tears of sadness exactly, or even happiness. They were tears of recognition, of meeting an old friend after too long apart. As she approached the end of the piece, Elena added one more unexpected flourish. A cascade of notes that tumbled down the keyboard like water over rocks, finally resolving into a single clear tone that hung in the air like a question waiting to be answered. Only then, as the last note faded away, did Elena open her eyes. The first thing she noticed was the silence, complete absolute silence. No clinking glasses, No whispered conversations, no movement at all. Then she saw the faces. The woman in the sparkly dress who had laughed at her earlier now had tears tracking down her cheeks, leaving trails in her perfect makeup. A gray-haired man near the window stood perfectly still, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. One of the younger servers, a college student named Raj who usually couldn't stop fidgeting, was absolutely motionless, his mouth slightly open in surprise. Even the kitchen staff, still clustered at the doorway, seemed unable to move or speak. The head chef, known for his gruff demeanor and constant shouting, was dabbing at his eyes with the corner of his apron. And then there was Zhang. He stood closest to the piano, and his face had completely transformed. The cold amusement was gone. So was the challenge, the arrogance, the casual cruelty of a man used to bending the world to his will. Instead, there was something Elena couldn't quite name, something that looked almost like wonder. For several long seconds, no one spoke. No one moved. It was as if time itself had stopped to listen to Elena play, and now couldn't quite remember how to start again. Then, from somewhere in the back of the room, someone began to clap. The single pair of hands clapping was soon joined by another and another, until the entire room erupted in thunderous applause. People stood from their chairs, their faces lit with genuine emotion. Some were still wiping away tears. Others were smiling like they had just witnessed something truly special, which, Elena realized with a jolt of surprise, they had. Mr. Patel was beaming with pride, as if Elena was his own daughter. Tanya was jumping up and down, clapping wildly. Even the other servers who had looked away earlier in embarrassment were now applauding enthusiastically, their faces showing a mix of shock and admiration. Elena sat frozen on the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. She hadn't played for an audience in 5 years, and never for one like this. The sound of their applause washed over her like a wave, almost knocking her off balance. "I told you," a voice said close to her ear. Elena turned to find Zhang standing right beside the piano. He wasn't clapping like the others. Instead, he was watching her with an intensity that made her nervous. "I knew you were hiding something the moment I saw your hands." Elena didn't know what to say. The music had left her feeling raw and exposed, as if she had just shared her diary with a room full of strangers. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Zhang asked. "I started when I was 6, Elena said, finding her voice. "My mother taught me at first. Then I had teachers. I was going to study at the National Conservatory, but she trailed off, not wanting to share her personal tragedy with this man." Zhang nodded slowly, a strange expression crossing his face. For a moment he seemed almost human, not the cold billionaire who had demanded she perform for his amusement, but someone who truly understood what music meant. "That piece," he said. "I've never heard it before." "You wouldn't have," Elena replied, a small spark of pride cutting through her confusion. "I wrote it." Zhang's eyebrows shot up. Before he could respond, they were interrupted by a crowd of guests who had gathered around the piano, all eager to speak to Elena. That was absolutely incredible. "I've never been so moved by a piece of music. Do you perform professionally? Where can we hear you play again?" The questions came fast, the faces blending together. Elena felt dizzy with the sudden attention. These were the same people who had smirked at her just minutes ago, expecting to be entertained by her failure. Now they looked at her with genuine respect, even awe. The woman in the sparkly dress pushed her way to the front, her eyes still damp. "I must have your contact information," she insisted, pressing a business card into Elena's hand. "I'm on the board of the City Symphony Orchestra. We need to talk." Elena looked down at the card in shock. "Patricia Lee, board member, City Symphony Orchestra." Her hands started trembling again, but for an entirely different reason. As the crowd continued to swirl around her, Elena caught sight of someone standing at the back of the room, holding up a phone. A young man she didn't recognize had recorded her performance. With a sinking feeling, she realized her private moment had probably already been shared online. Eventually, Mr. Patel gently dispersed the crowd, reminding everyone that they still had dessert to serve. As the guests reluctantly returned to their tables, still buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed, Elena stood up from the piano on shaky legs. "Take a break," Mr. Patel told her kindly. "You've earned it." Elena nodded gratefully and slipped out through the kitchen, needing a moment to collect herself. She found a quiet spot in the staff break room and sat down, her mind racing. What had just happened? Had she really played like that after all this time? And what would come of it? She pulled out her phone and saw 3 missed calls from home. Their neighbor, Mrs. Choi, who stayed with Miguel when Elena worked late. Panic shot through her as she quickly called back. "Mrs. Choi? Is everything okay? Is Miguel all right?" "Everything is fine, dear," the older woman assured her. "Miguel just wanted to tell you something exciting. His doctor called with good news about a new treatment option. Here, I'll put him on." "Elena?" Miguel's voice came through, bubbling with excitement. "Dr. Thompson called. He says I'm eligible for that new therapy program we read about. The one that might actually help my joints get better, not just manage the pain." "That's amazing, Miguel." Elena felt a rush of joy for her. "Brother, but isn't that the experimental program? The one that insurance won't cover?" There was a small pause. "Yeah," Miguel admitted, his voice losing some of its enthusiasm. "It's pretty expensive, but Dr. Thompson said there might be some financial assistance programs we could apply for." "We'll figure it out," Elena promised, though she had no idea how. Even with financial assistance, the new treatment would likely cost more than they could afford. But she couldn't bear to dampen her brother's hope. "I'm so happy for you." "How's your night going?" Miguel asked. "Boring as usual?" Elena laughed, the sound slightly hysterical even to her own ears. "Not exactly. I'll tell you about it when I get home." After hanging up, Elena sat for a few more minutes, trying to process everything. The piano, the applause, Patricia Lee's business card, now safely tucked in her pocket, Miguel's news. It was too much to take in all at once. When she finally returned to the VIP lounge, she found the atmosphere had completely changed. The party was winding down, with some guests already leaving. As she quietly resumed her duties, picking up empty dessert plates and offering coffee, she noticed people watching her differently. Some smiled warmly. Others looked at her with curious eyes as if seeing her for the first time. As the last guest began to depart, Zhang approached her again. He had been deep in conversation with someone on his phone for the past half hour, but now he looked directly at Elena with that same intense expression. "I want you to play at my charity gala next weekend," he said without preamble. It wasn't a question or an invitation. It was another command. "I'll pay you $10,000 for a 30-minute performance." Elena's mouth fell open. $10,000? That was almost 4 months of her salary. That kind of money could help with Miguel's new treatment. It could give them breathing room they hadn't had in years. But something about Zhang's tone, about the way he just assumed she would say yes, made her pause. He was looking at her the way someone might look at an interesting new acquisition, a painting or a rare car. Not like a person with their own life and choices. "I appreciate the offer," Elena said carefully. "But I haven't performed in years. I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that." Zhang looked genuinely surprised, as if he wasn't used to hearing the word no. $20,000, he said, raising the offer as casually as someone might suggest adding extra cheese to a pizza. "Think about what you could do with that money." Elena was thinking about it so hard it hurt. $20,000 would change everything for her and Miguel. But something deep inside her resisted. "I need time to think about it," she said, meeting his gaze steadily. "This is all happening very fast." Zhang studied her for a long moment, then pulled out a sleek business card of his own and handed it to her. "Call me when you decide, but don't wait too long." He turned to leave, then paused. "You have a rare gift, Elena. It doesn't belong in a restaurant." After he left, Elena stood holding his card, feeling like her entire life had just been turned upside down in a single evening. She had no idea what would happen next or what choice she would make. But for the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten: possibility. 3 days after the night that changed everything. Elena sat across from Dr. Thompson in his small office, clutching Miguel's hand. The doctor was explaining the new treatment program again, going over the potential benefits and the schedule of appointments. Elena was trying to focus, but her mind kept drifting back to the piano, to the feeling of music flowing from her fingers, after so many years. The good news, Dr. Thompson was saying, is that Miguel is an ideal candidate. His age, the specific type of arthritis he has, his overall health, everything suggests he could see significant improvement. Miguel squeezed Elena's hand, his face bright with hope. At 16, he was too young to have spent the last 3 years in constant pain. Too young to have missed so many normal teenage experiences because of his condition. And the cost? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Dr. Thompson's expression softened. As I mentioned, it's an experimental program, so insurance won't cover it. The total cost for the full year of treatment would be around $50,000. The number hung in the air between them. $50,000. It might as well have been $1 million. Even with Zhang's offer of $20,000 for one performance, they would still be far short. We'll figure it out, Elena said, more for Miguel's benefit than because she believed it. There must be options. Outside the doctor's office, Miguel looked at her with eyes that were trying too hard to be brave. It's okay, Elena. I'm doing fine with my current meds. We don't need this new treatment. Elena's heart broke a little at his words. Miguel had always tried to make things easier for her, even when he was the one suffering. Let's not decide anything yet, she told him. Sometimes solutions come from unexpected places. How right she was. When they arrived home, their neighbor, Mrs. Choi, was waiting with an excited expression. Elena, you're all over the internet. What? Elena's stomach dropped. Mrs. Choi held up her tablet, showing a video titled, Waitress Silences, Billionaire with Amazing Piano Performance. It already had over 2 million views. That's you, Miguel exclaimed, grabbing the tablet. When did this happen? Why didn't you tell me? As Miguel watched the video, his eyes growing wider by the second, Elena checked her phone. There were dozens of missed calls and messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Her email inbox, usually empty except for Bill's and Miguel's school updates, was suddenly full. One email caught her attention. It was from Professor Lena Rivera, the head of the piano department at the National Conservatory, the same woman who had offered Elena a scholarship 5 years ago, before her parents' accident changed everything. Dear Elena, the email began, I was astonished to see your performance video. Your playing has matured in ways I couldn't have imagined. The depth of emotion, the technical skill even after years without practice, it's extraordinary. I would very much like to speak with you about opportunities at the conservatory. We have special programs for exceptional students in unusual circumstances. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Elena stared at the screen, unable to believe what she was reading. A chance to study music again after all this time? It seemed impossible. But other messages were equally surprising. There were interview requests from local news stations, invitations to perform at various venues, and even a few offers from small recording studios. The video had clearly struck a chord with people. The story of a waitress revealing her hidden talent was the kind of thing that spread like wildfire online. Elena, this is amazing, Miguel was saying, his eyes shining with excitement. You have to call these people back. You have to play again. Before she could respond, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Hesitantly, she answered. Is this Elena Reyes? A woman's voice asked. Yes, that's me. This is Patricia Lee from the City Symphony Orchestra Board. We met briefly at Blue Harbor Restaurant. I gave you my card. I remember, Elena said, her mouth suddenly dry. I was hoping we could meet to discuss some possibilities. Your video has caused quite a stir in the music community. People are asking who you are, where you've been studying. It's not often we discover talent like yours in such an unexpected place. As Elena scheduled a meeting with Ms. Lee, she felt like she was in a dream. Just a few days ago, she had been a waitress with a buried past. Now, doors were opening all around her. Doors she had thought were closed forever. The next week was a whirlwind. Elena met with Professor Rivera, who offered her a special program at the conservatory that would allow her to study part-time while maintaining her responsibilities to Miguel. She spoke with Ms. Lee, who invited her to audition for a special showcase featuring emerging local talent. Several small venues reached out about paid performances. And then there was Zhang's offer still on the table, $20,000 for one night. Elena had almost decided to accept it when something unexpected happened. A letter arrived from a law firm representing the Richard Zhang Foundation. Inside was a formal notification that Miguel had been selected as a recipient of their medical assistance grant, covering the full cost of his experimental treatment program. Elena stared at the letter in disbelief. There had been no application, no interview. The grant had simply appeared as if by magic. Or not by magic, she realized, but by the hand of a billionaire who had more depth than she'd given him credit for. When she called the number on Zhang's business card, he answered immediately, as if he'd been expecting her call. "I can't accept the grant," Elena said without preamble. "Not if it's because of me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "The foundation chooses recipients based on need and potential benefit," Zhang said carefully. "Your brother qualified on both counts, but you only knew about him because of me." "Perhaps," Zhang acknowledged, "but does that make him less deserving?" Elena thought about Miguel, about the hope in his eyes when Dr. Thompson explained the UFI new treatment. "No," she admitted, "it doesn't." "The offer to play at my gala still stands," Zhang continued, "but it's a separate matter entirely. You can accept one, both, or neither. The choice is yours." Elena took a deep breath. "I'll play at your gala," she said, "but not for money. I'll do it to thank you for helping Miguel." She could almost hear Zhang's smile through the phone. "I look forward to it," he said. 6 months later, Elena stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, hardly able to believe where she was. The special showcase for emerging talents had drawn a full house, and she was about to perform her own composition, an expanded version of the piece she had played that night at Blue Harbor, now properly titled Awakening. As she waited for her name to be called, Elena thought about the journey that had brought her here. She was now studying part-time at the conservatory while also performing regularly at small venues around the city. Miguel's new treatment was showing promising results. For the first time in years, he was having more good days than bad ones. And somewhere in the audience tonight sat Richard Zhang. He had become an unexpected ally in her new life, offering connections and opportunities, but never trying to control her path. He had even helped fund a music program at Miguel's school inspired by their story. As Elena walked onto the stage to face the crowd, she felt no fear. The piano before her was not an enemy or even a reminder of lost dreams. It was an old friend, waiting to help her tell her story, a story of loss and recovery, of buried talents and second chances, a story that had silenced a room with one song, and in doing so, had helped her find her voice again.